There is a DUI accusation going on. I'm sure everyone has heard about this already. We definitely have to talk about it. We also have an elderly couple that was hit by a scooter, not necessarily by a Suga, but we'll talk about that. So hey dumplies, it's Dave Desai. Let's get into it. There's a lot going on. There is definitely this DUI charge going on with Suga, and we need to get into it. First of all, if you're not familiar with what's going on, let's talk about it. Yesterday night, Suga left, I believe, a restaurant, or he was drinking at a bar or whatever it was, and he took his electric scooter. Now, he probably had a little bit more alcohol than he was supposed to. He said one drink, and this was confirmed by him, that he actually said that this happened. And then the label actually put out their own statement about this, which we'll get into all of that. He then, on his way driving home with his electric scooter, he fell over near the end, like when he was almost home, and a police officer had noticed him, requested for him to take a breathalyzer test, and he failed that. So I believe the standard in Korea is like 0.03 alcohol, and he scored, I think, 0.08%. So he was like more than double what the legal amount was. Now, a side note, why isn't it zero? It's kind of interesting to me. I don't know why we're allowing people to even just take like one shot and then drive, but that's a whole other story. This caused a lot of shock, and I'm sure it wasn't intended to be something that was super shocking. Now, a lot of people say that I like to defend BTS even in times in which there's nothing to defend. However, I'm not defending, and obviously I don't agree with this action. And before we get into it even more, I do have to say that people do bad things. Just because you do something bad does not mean you're a bad person. And people do bad things all the time. People are going to disappoint you all the time. So if this was like a family member that did this, and you know in your family member's heart if they're a good person or not, and then seeing them do something that is clearly bad, you're not automatically just going to think that they're a bad person. You're going to have a little bit more understanding. And I would say this is important to approach anyone who does anything bad. And I mean even people who end up in jail. While that's like a very extreme example, and obviously they did something really, really bad, but does that mean that their entire entity as a person is a bad person? No, and things are rarely ever this black or white. It's usually in the middle somewhere. So Suga probably felt like he was very close to home. He probably felt like he was only a few miles from home. Likely he probably went out after work, I'm assuming, and then didn't realize that the restaurant or the place that he was drinking at was much further from his home than he was thinking. And he was caught because he fell over towards the end, so obviously police might have thought he was drinking, and thus he obviously would get caught eventually. There are a lot of people who are saying that it's not that bad, and I will not lie. This is a pretty bad situation. Number one, it is against the law, and number B, an electric scooter can go up to 25 miles per hour depending on the scooter, and we don't know how fast he was actually going, but there have been traffic cameras or whatever that have been posted. Of course, we can't even really see if it's him, so it could be anyone, but people are saying that it's him because the timing, I guess, matches up. And obviously the police had to file a report with the time. So there's essentially trying to say that it matches up so that this scooter that's going by and is shooting through the video and it's blurry and it's him. So he is going fairly fast. This isn't like your normal scooter. This isn't like he was riding a bike after drinking, because as fast as a bike can go, it usually won't end someone's life, probably severely injure them at most, but it wouldn't kill them. And definitely wouldn't kill someone if it hit a car. While an electric scooter is a different story, going 25 miles an hour and can like very much dent a car. And cars have gotten into accidents even going that fast. And of course, a human, if it hits, would be injured at best. And he and his label have severely apologized for this. And at this point, there isn't much that is left to do. He got his license revoked, and he is currently serving his civil duty. So that means whatever the government offers him as punishment, he will likely take, and he would also have to take. This is very serious, but it doesn't mean that he's a bad person. I want to clarify that. Now, some people are twisting this to come up with a conspiracy that is beyond interesting, where they're trying to say that Min Hee-jin was the one who orchestrated this. When I heard this, I couldn't stop laughing because, first of all, there is a lot of sexism in this response, in this rumor, because it's trying to say that a woman is responsible for something that a man did. Now, the accusation revolved around Min calling the police, knowing that Suga had been drinking and essentially tried to get him arrested, with people saying that since he lives in a residential area, or at least he's believed to be living in a residential area, there wouldn't just be police officers hanging around. First of all, we don't know exactly where he lives. And if he does live in a super high-end area, at least the area that I'm assuming he lives in, I don't know exactly. But yes, there would be police officers patrolling that area. There's security in those gated communities every single hour of the day. Some of them are like legit police officers they can arrest you. Also, we don't know how far he was. Was he in a neighborhood that was a little bit more shady, but needed to pass that neighborhood in order to get to his gated community? Because that happens all the time. Places like LA and even New York, you'll have like the wealth gap change per block, where you'll see one block that is full of rich people, and the next block is all homeless people, and the next block after that is all rich people. So to make up this rumor to say that this was all orchestrated and that Min even knew what Suga was doing is a bit crazy to me, because why on earth would she even care that he's going out drinking? And how would she then know that Suga would decide to take a scooter after? Now, I am trying to think of the mental health of someone. I have been around influencers who have been canceled, and the result has led them to do things that they wouldn't want to do. And this is for influencers, people who don't have a global audience, right? They're not super huge. They're not household names. When they do get backlash, there's still a way to run away from it or shut your phone off. But this story made mainstream headlines. So this is not something where Suga can just turn off his phone. I'm sure all his family members are reaching out. Obviously, the police had reached out, and the label is probably trying to figure out what they're going to do. And I'm sure he feels really bad. I'm sure he's not okay right now. And the last thing I want to hear from him is that he is kicking himself right now. And there's just a lot of stuff going on there. Some people have been scared that he will be removed from the BTS reunion, or the label might take more drastic action like that, given what's happened. However, we don't know, and I don't think that that would happen. I think they would try to figure out a way to come to any civil solution, and things can hopefully go back to normal. He didn't really hurt anyone, which I think does matter. This would have been a completely different conversation if he had ended up ending someone's life. I'm pretty sure he would have stepped away from the spotlight completely, and things would be very different. But since no one was hurt, I think this can just be a warning, and I don't mean from my opinion. I mean like it's probably going to be treated that way. But I'm not a lawyer. I don't know exactly what the laws are, and even if there's any leniency with certain things, right? But going back to his mental health just a little bit, I think a lot of people are trying to make it worse on purpose by bringing up stories in which people have passed away from electric scooters. So people have brought up a story where an elderly couple was hit and both of them had their lives taken. I'm sure this is to show the actual severity of the situation, and it's to bring two conversations about how severe something like this could be and how it could have ended up. But I don't think that this is necessary for him to see Suga, because he knows. He 100% knows. Police have probably told him. He has probably been scolded by the label. There's no way he doesn't know. For him to see that and for him to know that this is what the community might be thinking about him in this way hurts, because clearly he is not a bad person. He deserves a second chance in something like this. So something I got wrong before was that apparently his alcohol levels were at allegedly higher, like at 0.227%. And this is important because the alcohol limit in which you would have to be under to pass the breathalyzer would be 0.03%. So he was almost over 7 times the limit. He said that he had just one drink, so he didn't take endless beers, and a lot of people are calling him a liar because they think that that cannot possibly be true given his results. I don't know anything about alcohol. I don't know how it works, because in my mind, if you had just drank a cup of beer and there's still alcohol in your mouth because it's just lingering there, or you were to swish alcohol in your mouth for some reason and then take a breathalyzer, it would put you really high even if you didn't have that much, or if you weren't really drunk. So I cannot comment on that. However, the alcohol limits and the amounts that he allegedly had is what's really being debated, because depending on how high the alcohol levels are and how past the limit they are, the punishments get more and more severe. And this is just how the law works in order to be very fair, right? So someone who is extremely drunk, maybe can barely see, can barely hold a sentence, can barely walk, that person deciding to, let's say, get into a car and drive is going to receive a much different punishment than someone who may be, like, as I said earlier, swished a beer in his mouth, spat it out, and then drove. These things are obviously very different, and for very obvious reasons. And so the debate now is, since it was initially believed his alcohol intake was below 0.08%, meaning that he would be above the alcohol limit, but below like the first or second tier, making it like one of the lesser crimes, if that makes sense. But it being above 0.2% would make a different crime or a higher tier. So he allegedly faces 2 possible punishments. One of them being slightly under $15,000 US. He would have to pay or face anywhere from 2 to 5 years in prison. Now, this is scary to think about, because I still believe he's a really good person and he wouldn't deserve 5 years in prison. But also, a celebrity being in prison is a very different situation than most regular people going to prison, because most celebrities would just do like a house arrest for like 5 years. However, it's still not great. He would miss a lot of the BTS activities. A lot of people are asking him to leave the group, and now a lot of people are really, really upset because the alcohol intake was very different from maybe what they initially thought it would be. And also, they just think that the situation is now a lot bigger than what it was. A lot of people had many different reactions to hearing that he could potentially face prison time. Now, him paying a fine, a lot of people are not happy about this, and a lot of people are trying to protest for him to not pay a fine, saying that under 15,000, even if it was 15,000, is not a lot of money for him. This is probably how much he makes in a very little amount of time. So they feel like that's not really a punishment. So a lot of people are actually trying to see if he could do a prison sentence, which I think is so sad and messed up. I know this is like not the best and optimal situation, but I don't think that someone like him should have a prison thing on his record. It's just a mistake. It's a really bad mistake. However, nothing bad happened, thank God. And I think that that is something that should be taken in consideration when looking at these things. I am and always will be biased when things like this happen. And I say when because things like this will happen because they are human beings and things like this happen. We always do things that we regret. We've done things that we're maybe not the proudest of, right? Some bigger than others. And I think everyone deserves a second chance, especially people who, innately are good people. There are people out there who do this and then they also actually do really heinous crimes towards other people. I will guarantee you, Suga seeing all the headlines about this, him reading about what people are saying about him and just taking all that in, he will never do this again. And I think this is enough of a lesson learned because he will now have to choose. Am I going to go out and drink or do I want a career? And I think he's going to choose his career. A lot of the charges kept getting worse before it started to stall out like where it is now. And where we're at right now is that he was believed to have gotten a fine. He mentioned that he just had one drink, but his alcohol levels were about 7 to 8 times higher than the legal limit, and they are allegedly charging him similarly to a car DUI thing, because it's not just like a skateboard or a bike or something like that. It's an electric scooter, which is very different. I've seen some posts of people saying that his honor should be revoked because if you don't remember, not too long ago, all of the BTS members were given a cultural merit badge, and the merit badge was actually used as part of the argument as to why they should be military exempt. That badge was also a part of a new law known as the BTS law that would go into effect and could essentially change a lot of lives if those people ended up causing as much noise and success as BTS had. And that law would change a huge part of Korean culture, which is going to the military. And then, of course, just the status of what this is. People aren't given this just willy-nilly. It's typically people have contributed a lot to the country. So when this was given, it was considered a huge deal, and it was considered a huge honor, and aside from that, also just like a huge thing to brag about. So after this DUI situation, a lot of people are trying to essentially say that it should be something that should get revoked, or trying to strip something away from him, because now he's canceled, right? This is the part of cancel culture which makes me a little upset, because this is an awful thing that's happened. 100% absolutely. This is just an awful thing. But also, I feel like a huge part of the community that is upset with this is just upset because now they have a reason to be upset. They don't actually fully care. And now they can cancel Suga and it actually kind of be successful because they have something to say. And of course, a DUI charge is very serious. There's no question about it. But a lot of the people who I'm seeing that are upset about it, I feel like they don't actually care about the DUI charge. They're just being upset because it's something that they can get mad at. For example, they would probably start this hate train if more people acted upset about jaywalking. It feels almost opportunistic for some of these situations. Something that I think a lot of people don't realize is even if he gets everything stripped from him right now, right this second, he would still not be within the same leagues as y'all. He would still not be considered a normal person. He would still always find a way to make money and to bounce back and to get back to where he is now. You cannot cancel someone who has this many connections. You cannot cancel someone who, even if they were to just lose all of their money, have their entire bank account drained, can literally just go back out there, work with a couple other producers, and then make millions back. Once you become famous, you can't just not be famous. You can just not really be talked about, not as relevant anymore, but you know how to be famous and rich. You did it once, you can do it again. And as of right now, there are no claims of something as severe as this. I don't think that this is something that the country is looking into right now. The military had basically said that the military isn't going to put any additional charges on him because this was not during the working hours. So the military, if this represents Korea, which it definitely does, they're openly saying that they're not going to put any charges to enforce any punishments. Now, there's also this other rumor saying that he is an alcoholic, and only when something happens, of course, people are then going to be like, now he is this blank thing. But if you were to to keep going as normal and didn't do a DUI, no one would have thought he was an alcoholic, even if he was. No one would care. No one would say anything. Mind you, there are plenty of alcoholics who are very high functioning, who never drive when they're drinking, who never do anything bad, who most people aren't even aware of the drinking all the time. And people just see them with a drink all the time, but then they don't assume that they're an alcoholic. But if someone does something once that is really bad and drinking is involved, they're suddenly an alcoholic. There's been some people saying that he should go to rehab and that he is an insane drinker. There was even this post going around, which I'll try to find, where it showed a drink that he was drinking a long time ago. I think this was in one of the reality shows or something, and the drink, when people looked it up, they found that it contained 47% alcohol, or some like really insane number. To me, anything below 4% is good. That's typically what I would like, because you can't really taste it. It doesn't really get you drunk unless you drink a lot of it. Then anything honestly above like 20 or 30% is going to be really strong for me. It's going to be way too strong. Now, I'm a very light drinker, so it doesn't really matter how it affects me, because most people can hold their liquor better than me. But I'm saying this because I think that it's kind of crazy. Like, if this alcohol drink is 47%, then it would probably taste like rubbing alcohol. But we caught one image, and we caught an image of what could be his favorite drink. Could not be. It could just be something he's trying. But this doesn't prove that he's an alcoholic. And it proves that he has one drink that he likes. And you can be someone who has a high alcohol tolerance without being someone who is an alcoholic. Now, since there is all of these alcoholic jokes being made, which I think is kind of sick to make these jokes, people have been taking moments and pictures from Pinterest and other social media platforms of people holding bottles of alcohol and driving. And they've been kind of making compilations of this to say that this is the Suga challenge. And I don't even have to tell you how messed up this is, not even for him, but just in general, how someone could be struggling with alcohol, could see something like this, and then it really upset them because they're feeling like people are laughing at them for something that they're struggling with. And I know what group, or I have an inkling that this is coming from a specific group's fandom. Now, this group, whatever it is, I'm not going to say it, is not enforcing it. They're not talking about this. They haven't made any statements, but their community is actively trying to attack Suga. It's really messed up, because if you paid this much more attention to your own group and make challenges based off of your own group's songs, they can be even more successful. Like, this effort is so wasted on Suga. Don't get me wrong, this group is already very successful, but their community spends more time bashing other artists than they do promoting their favorite artist's art, at least in my opinion. If I don't like someone, I'm not going to make fan pages or try to trend hate. I'm just going to move on, because I don't really want to indulge or spend time interacting with something I don't like. I would much rather indulge myself in the things that actually make me happy. So to me, this tells me that a lot of people who do this aren't even doing it because they hate any of the BTS members so much. They're doing this because they're bored. If you genuinely hate the members so much, you would just block them and enjoy your life not seeing them. You know what has come out? We know that Suga has left an apology. So we know that him on an electric scooter is probably real, but we don't know what else is real and what isn't. For example, Yonhap News is one of the biggest Korean news agencies out there, and they allegedly got a hold of some clips that show Suga running down the sidewalk and falling. I don't fully know what they're trying to insinuate here. If they were saying that he was drunk or what, because you cannot tell if you're drunk from this clip. You also can't tell that it's him from this clip. This literally could be anybody, and there would be no way for us to know, because if you're going by the fact that when we saw this blurry clip of an electric scooter of him driving by with that, and you're saying that that's him, but now you're seeing this other clip of him running down the sidewalk, and it's supposed to be that both of these things happened around the same time, and it doesn't really make sense. But what is this clip implying? That when the police stopped him, he ran away? I don't know what this is supposed to be. I don't think that he would run away. I think he would just be like, okay, well, let me take the breathalyzer test. So this clip to me seems a little bit odd. And again, we can't see anything. So that is one of those things where you're just gonna have to believe your own eyes, which is that if you can't see anything, you don't know what's real and what isn't. We also live in 2024 where people can buy security cameras that are actually clear. I would actually argue and say it's pretty hard to buy camera equipment that is blurry nowadays. Like, it's almost all in 4K, unless these cameras were just never upgraded, in which case that would make even less sense, because these cameras are 24/7, meaning if it was an old camera from like the early 2000s, it would have broke already. So we are seeing that it's blurry. That's very suspicious. That's untrustworthy, at least in my opinion. This is followed up with a lot of comments, of people not just requesting him to leave BTS, but to fully retire from the music industry altogether. And I mean, this is kind of crazy to say to someone. I mean, could he retire? Probably. I mean, if he took all his money and he spent it on investments and all that sort of stuff, he would have more than enough money to live out the rest of his life without having to worry about money and still live in luxury. But it's odd to request someone to retire when they don't want to, or when they're passionate about what they do, because to have these opinions based off of a clip that is just so blurry. It's so blurry that it maybe has 3 pixels in there. You can barely see the shape of the person that you're trying to identify. Like the color of the person blends in with the rest of the background. It is barely distinguishable. The cars in the video barely look like cars. Also, this doesn't even begin to compare with how bad some of these scandals in K-pop have been. I mean, this is still considered pretty light. Now, of course, this is a pretty bad thing. I'm not taking that lightly. But if you compare some of the sex trafficking scandals that have come out, this is really nothing compared to that. And people haven't even fully forced those people to completely retire from the music industry. Apparently, Dispatch ended up putting out a clip saying that this was the official CCTV footage of the actual event. Now, how they recovered this, I don't know. Maybe they pulled some connections or whatever it was. This CCTV footage actually makes a lot more sense. So the original was like a blurry image of some person on a scooter rushing, zooming by, and then the second one was someone getting off a scooter and then falling. When all this came out, it made people think that Suga was lying in his apology because he never mentioned any of those things, and what he said didn't match up with this alleged CCTV footage. Now, when this clip came out, it actually matched very perfectly with what his statement was. So now it actually feels more real. So a lot of people were upset over that first footage, which is not released by Dispatch. It was released by another news company. And a lot of people are now questioning where they got that footage. Also, what were they attempting to do by releasing a footage like that? Like, that made no sense, because they definitely should have been aware that the footage didn't make sense because they were releasing 2 different videos with 2 different stories. So which one is Suga? He cannot be both. So the actual footage shows someone driving with an electric scooter on the sidewalk. It's not like a motorcycle looking scooter. It literally is just a regular scooter that is L-shaped, maybe one with a seat, and it was very slowly zooming by. It was going fairly slow to the point where people who were walking by seemed comparable in terms of speed. And then a part of his statement, he said that he got to the gate or was near his house, he made a turn and flipped over and fell. From the initial first video, it was not clear how he would have fallen. It's not clear where his house was. So it seemed like he lied in his statement. However, what we're seeing here now seems to fit exactly with what his statement was. He did fall over at the end, but it looked like he fell over because it was such a sharp turn, and he likely would have been wobbly or fallen over even if he hadn't had a drink. So as per usual, and I say this a lot, don't make assumptions before the official news comes out. Let me know what you think. Make sure you check out my Patreon for more videos. Link down below. Let me just leave a comment right here. Love you. Bye.